Where I have the problem with is I'm patiently waiting to have roads done in my ward, tar and chipped, and I'm telling my constituents that they have to wait because we have so many projects on the go, and here we are doing work for private companies. I'd like my laneway done. Lots of my constituents would. How much do we pay Norfolk County to do it? Are we in the business of doing people's roads now?
Through the chairman to council, we are in this particular incident, the OMB has required that they maintain the road. If they are unable to maintain it through their own means because they are not contractors or municipalities who are able to do that. Regardless of the OMB hearing, or the OMB ruling, which has indicated that they are responsible for the maintenance of it, ultimately Norfolk County is responsible for the liability associated with it. There's nothing in the OMB ruling that indicates that these property owners are now accountable for anything that happens. So should there be an accident or anything of that, Norfolk County would be held liable exactly the same way we are in any other situation. The intention of this was that we now maintain the road to municipal standards to reduce our liability and ensure that we're in compliance with minimum maintenance standards on our road, but we're not doing it at taxpayers' expense. It's at the expense of the people who, through the OMB ruling, were required to pay for those costs.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any further? Councillor Brunton, go ahead.
Just very quickly, Lee mentioned two things here. One, that the costs are recovered from the individuals involved, and I guess my question is that like a bond, letter credit, or can we slap it on the tax bill if they're not paid? Is that how we're dealing with it?
Through the chairman to council, they are invoiced for the work. Right. And we have our normal recovery mechanisms should the invoices not be paid, and Mr. Johnson can elaborate on those details if needed.
Well, I'd like to hear that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Brunton. If an invoice isn't paid, I believe it's within 60 days, and the person owns property in Norfolk County, then we will put that on the property taxes.
In this particular case, we can do that then, is what you're saying?
Any invoice that we send out, if it's uncollectible and the person owns property in Norfolk County, then we do have the ability through the Municipal Act to do that.
Okay, even though the maintenance might not be on their property, it's on our property, the way I understand it. The maintenance, whatever it may be on the road allowance, you can collect that on their tax bill?
If we're sending a property owner an invoice, whatever the particulars are, I'm not sure about that, but if we're sending a property owner an invoice and it's uncollectible, we can put it on their taxes. If the invoice has their name on it and we're billing them for that particular service or that particular issue, then we can put it on their property taxes.
Thank you.
End of discussion. Okay. Anyone else on this particular matter? Mayor Luke.
One question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I read in the report that the county will be doing a surface treatment on our road, and it will be paid for by the resident. It says that under the order, I have to pay it. When will we see this road surface treated? Have you got a rough timeline later this spring?
Through the chairman to council, the original intention was to do it in the spring. As you're aware, there were some concerns with respect to the gas well in the area. And so we're doing some further investigation before we undertake any work in that area to ensure that we don't have any difficulties with that.
So we're not, Mr. Chair, we're not just sure yet, depending on the outcome of the gas well. Maybe we...
Through the chairman, that is correct.
Maybe we should surface treat right over the gas well.
Okay. I see no further speakers. You have the recommendation before you on 179. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Wells has moved. Mayor Luke has seconded. All those in favor? That is carried. That ends staff reports. Look at that, right at 5 o'clock in time for deputations. All right, we're going to move into deputations now. A reminder that there is a strict 10-minute time limit, and I will remind you when there is 1 minute remaining. Okay, first speaker is going to be Ms. Beverly Slater from the Norfolk County Library to speak respecting the Imagination Library launch. Whoops.
Dolly always said she was a little top heavy. I have some information packages for everyone. Do I need to push? No, I'm good. Your Worship, Mr. Chairman, Member of Council, as staff, and members of the community, I want to thank you for this opportunity to represent the Norfolk County Public Library and to provide this deputation. My name is Beverly Slater. I've been with the library for over 20 years, holding the position of Manager of Programming and Communications for the last 3 years. And I'm here today to speak to Council about 2 programs that the library is currently involved in. The first is the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, and Dolly and I would love to chat about it. This is a program that has originated out of the United States and is now finding a foothold in Canada. Dolly Parton grew up in poverty, abject poverty. She felt the sting of accepting charity and she knew want. And as a successful singer, actress, and business person, she looked for a way to give back to her community and set up the Imagination Library as part of her foundation. This charitable foundation covers the administrative aspects of mailing books to children from birth to age 5. The books are chosen by a panel of educational experts to be age-appropriate, educational, and fun. Local organizations partner with the foundation to organize the mailing list and to cover the cost of postage and books. The books are then mailed to registered children at no cost to the families receiving them. The Norfolk County Public Library and the Friends of the Library Norfolk organization are excited to announce that the NCPL will be the launch platform for the library in Norfolk County. The library has chosen to launch this initiative for several reasons. First of all, studies have shown that children who are read to for as little as 15 to 20 minutes a day are better students when they enter grade 1. A child needs to hear a minimum of 20,000 to 100,000 words a day to actively develop the part of their brain that deals with language. Books in the home encourage parents and caregivers to read to their children more. And studies have shown that children who have easy access to books are more interested in reading and eventually more interested in learning when they're in school. A recent study has shown that the average Canadian household has less than 88 books in the home. This includes everything from cookbooks to copies of scriptures to phone books. 88. That is a very low number for a household that may have small children in it. And there are many households where this number is even lower. So how does this information connect with the Dolly Parton Imagination Library? The Dolly Parton Library will mail 1 book a month to a registered child from the time of their enrollment to the month that the child turns 5. For a child registered at birth, that means 60 books will enter the household. The first book the child receives is The Little Engine That Could by Watty Piper. The theme of this book, as some of you may recall, is a hard-working little train engine that has to rescue a cargo train full of toys. Its theme is, as it works its way up the hill, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. And when it successfully crests the mountain and starts going downhill, it's, I knew I could, I knew I could, I knew I could. It is Dolly Parton's favorite story, and it is a great lesson for every child to learn. The final book that the child receives in this program is the story about going to school and entering the education system. The funding for the postage and the cost of the books is raised by the local host agency, in this case, the NCPL. The current cost of the book and postage is $3.55 a month, because the books are purchased at cost from Random House and its related publishers. So for roughly $50 a year, a child will receive 12 books in the mail in their own name to read and reread. Funding for this project is, of course, by donation. Donations over $10 are tax deductible. Receipts are issued by the Friends of the Library Norfolk. Donations can be made as gifts, as an outright donation, or an in memoriam. How can the council help? The library is looking for funding for this project. It is hoped that at least 100 children can be signed up by March of this year to receive books. That is a cost of $5,000 per year, and this program does need to be sustainable for at least 5 years. So that means that this program is currently looking for at least $25,000. The library has and will continue to reach out to community agencies, service groups, churches, philanthropic groups, and so on for their support, and some funding is already in place. It is hoped that the first books will be mailed out in March of 2018. The library would like to ask for the support of the council in this important project. It is estimated that there are at least 2,000 children in the county in any particular year under the age of 5 that would be eligible for this program. So that is on behalf of Dolly and myself. The second program that I would like to mention is also in your information package, is the Community Volunteer Income Tax Program, quite often referred to as the CVITP. This program has been operating in Norfolk County for well over 25 years. It was initially organized under the auspices of the Haldeman Norfolk Information Center, but changes in funding, locations, and staffing has led to the library taking the lead in running this program. The CVITP provides trained volunteers at centralized locations to run income tax clinics. These clinics allow low-income individuals or families to file their federal tax reports online and in a timely manner. The clinics are run by appointment only and are open to any resident of Norfolk County who meet the CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, guidelines. The volunteers who run these clinics are vetted through the CRA and have police checks on file and take part in specific online training seminars. A short review of the program. The CVITP is a free program targeting low-income people for whom volunteers prepare and file income tax returns. Why is this so important? The Poverty Action Partnership of Haldeman Norfolk has noted that when people with low income file their taxes, they are eligible to access up to 41 different income benefit programs. Many people with low incomes are not aware of this and are not aware of the benefits that exist for them by filing their taxes. Many people with low incomes do not file their taxes due to financial constraints. It can cost as much as $75 to $150 to get places like H&R Block to file your taxes, or due to other concerns such as low literacy rates, lack of understanding, or just not realizing that they need to do this. The CVITP is an initiative of the Canada Revenue Agency, and I can hear some eyes rolling, but the CRA does actually do some good. And it provides oversight of the program as well as training, and it supports the local sponsor organizations and volunteers. In Norfolk, the sponsoring agencies are the Norfolk County Public Library and the Simcoe Caring Cupboard. Members of the community volunteer with us, and with the 13 volunteers that we had in 2017, prepared 639 income reports for individuals in our community. Now, what does that mean for the county? The impact is financially significant. Of the 639 returns done last year, 638 people received tax rebates, tax refunds, and or positive adjustments to their income. We looked at some of the reports that we filed last year, and the average was at least $350 in refunds plus monthly rebates to each of the members. So that meant that over $233,000 came back into our community because these income tax reports were filed. One person received an income tax refund of over $7,000, and only one person had to pay. The tax clinics are held in March through April at the 5 library branches and also at the Norview Lodge. So why is this a topic to bring as a deputation to council? Well, the CVITP needs help. In this last year, we have lost 5 of our dedicated volunteers, 1 to death, 1 to a very ill spouse, and 3 have chosen to retire. The reasons are varied, but the loss is significant. And I am asking you to consider how you can tangibly help this program. There are a variety of skills needed, everything from answering phones to organizing the clinics, to making coffee, to doing the tax filing. The tax filing is all done online. It is a very straightforward program and no math is required. Could you please spread the word about this need for volunteers? If each one of you could share this with 5 other people in the community, and they in turn share it with 5 other people in the community, and so on, it wouldn't take too long before the county knew. Should you also know of a county agency or even a county staff person who could use the training for this tax filing in their job, such as, say, perhaps someone who works at a nursing home or a residential care facility, we would be happy to train them and allow them in turn to offer the service where they're working. Could you also spread the word about how this service provided by the CVITP affects your constituents. As councillors of this county, you are in contact with the community in a very unique way. I would ask that you share the information about the tax clinics to any and all who may benefit from it. In your information package are copies of available flyers. Please feel free to share these or contact me for additional copies if required. I would like to thank you for your time and consideration of this information, and I would like to point out one last thing in your information package. It is the Past, Present, and Future Youth Right. This was a year-long project run in coordination with students in Norfolk County and the library to commemorate and to remember Canada 150 in Norfolk County. Please read it and enjoy the voice of our youth. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. Questions from councillors? Councillor Oliver?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your presentation. My question is in relation to the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, and I appreciate all the material you've given us. I had a little familiarity with this because the Rotary Club that I'm part of had been invited to get involved at one point as well. I'm looking at the back of the second sheet of the package, and it's in reference to the selection committee. It's described, and I'll just read this paragraph very quickly. The Blue Ribbon Book Selection Committee consists of early childhood professionals who lend their expertise in choosing the perfect set of age-appropriate books for hundreds of thousands of children across Canada. And therein lies my question. I know this was a US-based program initially. It's now moved into Canada. Are we able to be confident that there will be Canadian books provided to these children?
So the books that were sent out in 2017 had a 26% Canadian content level. The books are provided through Random House and its subsidiary publishers, so there are Canadian authors and content. They are working to get the number up to 33 to 35%, so roughly a third of the books are Canadian, which if you actually go to most of our Canadian libraries, that is roughly the percentage that you would see on the shelf. The panel is 7 to 12 different experts depending on the year. They volunteer their services, and the cost of that panel is absorbed by the Dolly Parton Foundation.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's important, and you've given me the answer that I wanted. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. You may be
Thank you.
seated. I need a mover and a seconder to receive the deputation. Councillor Wells and Councillor Columbus. All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Our second deputation is Ms. Sandy Fettis from Norfolk PAWS. She was going to speak respecting an update on the Trap, Neuter, and Release program. Ms. Fettis, please.
Good evening, Chair, Mayor Luke, and councillors. I'm here this evening to update all of you on the great success of the TNR program so far. First and foremost, we'd all like to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Those of us that are genuinely concerned about the health and well-being of these innocent victims of a heartless society truly appreciate Norfolk County's financial assistance with this very important endeavor that is a huge priority to all of us. The contract for the TNR funding finally began on June 21st, 2017. The contract that was signed with Norfolk PAWS covers other rescue groups as well. These include Perfect Companions of Norfolk, Katie Metcalf, whose group is now called Positive Solutions, and Night and Day Animal Rescue. Under this contract, Norfolk PAWS was awarded $25,000 to be used exclusively for spay or neuter and vaccinations. This $25,000 was depleted in just 5 months, which saw the altering and vaccinating of 333 cats in Norfolk County. We're sure that some of you will argue that 333 is not enough impact on the supposed 30,000, which we feel is a number that was grossly exaggerated in the media. But of the 333, ironically, 163, which is almost exactly half of them, were female. So if these 163 had at least 4 kittens per litter, and easily 3 litters per year, and each of those litters produces on average another 2 females, and all those females, including the existing mothers, and the new kittens at 5 or 6 months of age can produce another 3 litters a year each, well, you do the math, if you can. And it's quite easy to see how quickly the situation can get out of control. But it's also easy to see how altering 333 cats has prevented the reproduction of literally thousands of kittens. I'd also like to point out here that our combined groups, through the Norfolk County funding and through our own fundraising efforts and donations, have actually spayed, neutered, and vaccinated 911 cats and kittens in 2017. So again, do the math. It's mind-boggling. the impact that we've had in 2017 alone towards curbing cat overpopulation in Norfolk County. And when you add in the cats the SDHS did with their funds, we've done some pretty impressive birth control. Also to clarify, a small number of these cats were former strays that had been previously adopted by families that couldn't afford to have their new pets fixed at full-cost vet clinics. But none of these cats were included under the Norfolk County funding, but they are included in our year's total numbers, because they too are now, now taken out of the reproductive equation. Of these 911 cats, only 93 were returned to their managed colonies, meaning they went back to their locations, predominantly barns, where they are fed regularly, have shelter, and are monitored. Not a single one was thrown out in the woods or dumped on some backcountry road. As far as the reports of huge colonies, we've only had a couple of colonies in the 40 to 50 cat range, some of 10 to 20 cats, but more often it's a case of a mother that someone didn't take the responsibility to get fixed, so that when she was pregnant or already had kittens, they were dumped for us to try and save. All receipts and records were turned over to Norfolk County during the program. To summarize our standards for the 333 cats that were covered under the funding, 163 were female, 170 were male, 219 were under the age of 6 months, 27 were 6 months to a year, 87 were over a year old. As far as the locations they came from, 67 from Simcoe, 76 from Delhi, 42 from Waterford, 14 from Port Rowan, 7 from Port Ryerson, 15 from Walsingham, 20 from Langton, 26 from Cortland, 27 from Wyndham Center, 2 from La Salette, 3 from Vanessa, 1 from Teeterville, 1 from Linville, 13 from Port Dover, 6 from Victoria, 4 from St. Williams, 5 from Frogmore, 1 from Nixon, 3 from Cultus. I'd also like to clarify a very important point. Although Norfolk County entered into an agreement with Norfolk PAWS for the TNR funding, we are acting as administrators for 4 separate TNR and rescue groups: Norfolk PAWS, Perfect Companions of Norfolk, Positive Solutions, and Night and Day Animal Rescue. We've been before council regularly regarding this program, and we're transparent and accountable to you as to how these funds are used. And we report to the appropriate department monthly as directed, with accurate information and record keeping. If there are monies left over from the allocated funding for 2017, we would like to request that, and would greatly appreciate it, if our groups could submit further receipts to utilize these remaining funds. We'd also like to request that for 2018 and the ensuing years of this 4-year pilot project, that the funds be divided more equitably, because while you're only dealing with 2 contracts, in actuality you are funding 5 separate groups, and the 4 groups covered under the umbrella of Norfolk PAWS name were clearly stated in the original contract. With these impressive numbers we presented to you this evening, we're here to request that the funding be continued, as the original proposal from October 2014 was for a 4-year pilot project, and it's only been 6 months so far. We're well aware that there's much talk about vast budget cuts for 2018, but we believe the funds for this important program are really a very small outlay in the overall scheme of things for a program with such a huge impact on a situation that Norfolk County Council and its many constituents have been looking for a solution to for 20+ years. Thank you, gentlemen, for your support.
Thank you. Speakers, Councillor Black first.
Yes, thank you very much, Sandy, and all the work that you and your group are doing for Norfolk County. It's appreciated. I did have the opportunity to go to Katie Metcalf's, Jean Bistrick's place, and they had the mobile spay-neuter hospital.
Right.
I just wondered if you know anything about that, or whether you could speak to that, explain the value of having something like that in Norfolk County.
Oh, that's a huge value. It's just been in the fall that they have branched out to Norfolk County. They used to deal with other areas. They did go on to the Six Nations Reserve, but it's just new that they're coming into Norfolk County. Actually, Brenda from Perfect Companions had the trailer at her shelter twice as well this fall. They can do 40 cats at one time, like in one day, which is a huge undertaking, huge accomplishment, and it just makes things a whole lot easier rather than us transporting them to London or Kitchener or Toronto or wherever else. It's just that much easier, and like I say, we can do so many in one time, so we'll definitely be utilizing that more in the spring. They've stopped in the winter because of travel, but they will be starting again in the spring.
Appreciate that. When I viewed it myself, I thought it was a fabulous way and efficient way of dealing with the situation, to bring the unit down and deal with the spay-neuter right then and there. And it was, when I saw it, it was like an assembly line situation, and they were going through a lot of animals very efficiently and effectively.
Yes, it's a great system, for sure.
Thank you. Councillor Brunton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Sandy. Very good report. I'd like to get a copy of it if I could.
Of my notes or of the full
The one you
records?
just presented.
Oh, sure, I can do that.
Yeah, you went through it pretty quick, and I can't do all the math, I'm not that quick, but
Are you going to figure out how many kittens?
well, no, I gave up on that part, but
So did I.
the four other groups you mentioned, though, is that how you come up with the 900?
Well, that was, the groups that are covered under our contract, we combined spayed or neutered 911 cats. That's just under our contract, not counting SDHS.
Okay, so, and Mr. Barrett has that information, like,
Well, under the funding, we only did 333. Our funds ran out. But under our own money, in total, we did 911 over the course of the year. But under Norfolk, under the 25,000 that we received from Norfolk County, we used all our money up, and it was 333 cats. The others were over and above on our dime.
okay, I guess, what's that work out to? Like, is that, I assume, within the report that Mr. Barrett gave us, but, so that's basically what the 25,000 would cover, the 330?
Yes, our price in the original contract was $75 per cat, which was spay or neuter
Okay.
and vaccinating, and, because some run slightly lower, but most run higher, so we had, in the original contract, that stated that it was just a flat rate per cat.
So I guess if we continued the funding, do you feel that you get the same results again? There's that much out there to look after, you feel?
Oh, definitely, yes.
Oh, no, I'm just
Yeah.
asking, like,
Well, like I say, we think the 30,000 is a little, or more than a little high, but there is definitely a lot out there. And, 6 months, it's been, well, even, like I say, we've been doing it even before the funding. It's, it's an ongoing thing, but
Right.
with the assistance, it makes it easier that we can help more.
Who does the trapping part of it?
We have each group has their own volunteers.
And they, like, can you give me an idea how they do that?
Well,
Like-
Peter could tell you, he came to our TNR clinic.
No,
But, yeah, it's just, well, you have to know where the cats are, you put the traps out, it's, you have to put the traps out ahead of time so that you're used to it, you only put their food in there, you don't feed them elsewhere, so that they learn that they have to, if they want to eat, they have to go in the trap, but it's not set, the doors are open, but it's not set, then when you actually need to get them, you set the trap. And then it's, it's covered to keep them calm, because, of course, they're very nervous, but if you cover the trap, then that calms them down somewhat. And then they're transported to the TNR clinic. And when they come back, the people that, whether they're going back to a rescue group or the shelter or to the original location, the people are given clear instructions that they have to be kept in a warm, safe location for a day to come out of the anesthetic and whatnot before they can be released. And
Okay,
so,
thank you.
you're welcome, thank you.
Councillor Oliver.
Very much, Mr. Chairman. Sandy, you did acknowledge that it was both the trap, neuter, and vaccination. You gave us the stats. Were all 333 of those animals vaccinated?
Oh,
as part of the
definitely,
trapping
yes.
process?
Yes, that's part of, by law, they have to be,
Okay.
yes.
And that would be for what diseases?
They are vaccinated against rabies, that one is by law.
Rabies
Yes,
is by law. Is
Yes,
that-
and then, I'm sorry?
No, was that the only one we did under our program or under our?
Oh, yes, and above that, but we do FVRCP, which is a respiratory
Yep.
disease. Some of the groups, depending, like if the cats are going to be going into, into the adoption program, then they're vaccinated for FRV, which is feline AIDS,
Feline.
and FELUC.
Okay,
But,
thank you.
thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Brunton.
And do you clip the ear on the cat? Is that standard practice?
Sorry. It is for, it's an option, but for the ones that are going back to managed colonies, we definitely do it because those ones you can tell that they have been spayed or neutered. Ones that are adoptable, that's the rescue group's option, whether they want to do that or not, because then those are more manageable, they can get a hold of them, they know that they're fixed. Whereas if you're putting them back into a colony and you got 7 black cats, how do you know which ones are fixed? But the tipping the left ear is a universal symbol.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Columbus, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Has it ever come, some people have cats as pets. They just let them run loose around the house. Perhaps they stay in the garage or barn or something. Has it ever come by where someone could trap and neuter and release a cat that is actually somebody's pet?
Not that I could say for sure. There was an instance that somebody thought their cat had been fixed, but by one of our groups, but nobody in our group was aware of this cat, so it could have been another independent. It could happen, but, it's, I suppose that's the risk they take if they let an unfixed cat outside, it's,
My
we
son-
don't do it intentionally, by any means.
My second question is, do any individuals kind of abuse this program where they actually have a number of cats in a barn that's their building and they take it here for the low-cost fix because you're offering this service rather than going to a veterinarian?
No, well, not that we're aware of. I mean, it's hard to police it totally, but I mean, we talk to the people and try to feel them out. Most people that have an overpopulation at the barns, it's because those cats have been dumped there because people see a barn, figure you need barn cats. And, it's really hard to, I mean, people can lie about a lot of things. We try to feel them out and we try to avoid that situation.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Oliver?
Thanks, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to speak again. Just on that last point, Sandy, it's part of that policing, as you described it, it's all your volunteers that are doing the trapping work, correct?
Right.
Or do you
Well-
allow people to bring cats to you from who knows where, and they become part of the program?
No, but sometimes they will do the trapping on their own property, but we go get the cats, yeah. But if they, because they're there all the time, so they can, if we
So-
tell them
so
how they
you-
could do the trapping, but.
You
I
do
mean,
allow private individuals to do the trapping under some circumstances?
Yes, but I mean, we
that-
check out that they have those cats there,
Okay, all
yeah.
right.
It's-
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we try to control the situation to the best of our abilities.
Okay. I see no further speakers. Sandy, thank you very much for your presentation, and you may be seated.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I need a mover and a seconder. Black and Brunton to receive this as information. All those in favor? That is carried. Yes. Go ahead.
Just a question to staff. Do we have this amount in our operating budget to be deliberated on in January, later in January?
Through the chair, you may recall when this program was developed, we talked about a declining or diminishing balance year over year. It started this in 2017 with $50,000 that was allocated $25,000 to both Norfolk Paws and Simcoe and District Humane Society. For 2018, there was a figure of $40,000, which is in the base budget. So it's not new and up and above, but council will be able to discuss that, deliberate further when we do the operating budget later this month. But the funds are in fact there, albeit at $40,000 for 2018.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also to Mr. Baird. Chris, are we anticipating a similar report from the Simcoe District Humane Society as well?
Through the chair, I certainly applaud Sandy and her colleagues for coming forward. I know she was in the media before the Christmas break. As part of the program, staff had made a commitment to council that we would do a year-end summary so that you would have those facts. We're in the process of compiling that. She's beat us to the punch, and commend her for that. We're just waiting to finish up the accounting for the year-end with the Humane Society, and we'll be bringing back a very brief statistical report, something along the lines with the information that was shared with you. So at least you'll know on the effectiveness of their efforts. There was a difference in the amount that each group was compensated, and Sandy and her team have done 333 cats through the program, leaving $25 remaining of their $25,000 allocation. I do anticipate the Humane Society did not quite reach as many as they could for whatever reason, but I'll report on that in detail in the next few weeks.
For that, Chris, it would be important to me, and I suspect to all of council, if we could have that data in time for the operating budget debate on this topic, if possible.
Through the chair, you can count on that.
Anyone else? Okay. Next, staff report. Cannabis production and processing policy review. Who's got this? Okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. Through the chair, staff have been doing a lot of research as it relates to the production and processing of cannabis in the county. And I'd like to start with just a brief background. So the Access to Cannabis for Medical Purposes Regulations, or the ACMPR, was released in August of 2016, and this was a response at the federal level to permit those with a prescription to be able to grow their own medical marijuana. And as council knows, as of July 1st, 2018, the recreational use of marijuana is going to be made legal. And that has some implications for us from a land use perspective. As a result of some changes of the federal licensing and regulation, a new form of production has surfaced in the county and across Ontario, and likely probably across the entire country. And I'm going to describe the two types of productions facilities. And really what it boils down to is there are two kinds here. The regulations reference two types of facilities or sites. Part one relates to the commercial facilities, and it's the commercial growth of medical marijuana. As of July 1st, there will also be some accommodation for the recreational growth, production, and processing of recreational marijuana. And part two relates to licensed individual designated person marijuana production. And I'll just give a brief description of how that system works. So with prescription from a doctor, an individual can apply to Health Canada for a license to grow marijuana for themselves, or they can designate a person to grow it for them. A property can have up to 4 licenses on it, meaning that it can have either 2 designated growers or 4 individual growers. So like if 2 designated growers could either grow for 2 people or 1 person in themselves. The trick is though with the size or the size and scale of the prescription, depending on how much cannabis somebody needs on a daily basis, and that's prescribed as per grams, that translates into a certain number of plants. So for instance, if your requirement is 50 grams of marijuana per day as a medicine, that translates into approximately 250 plants. Some of the prescriptions that we've seen, or not have seen, but have been reported on, are referencing the allowment to grow up to 1,000 plants, and that's in one prescription. So through that license, that one individual is capable of growing 1,000 plants. And if you translate that on a property by property basis with 4 licenses per property, you are now capable of having 4,000 plants being grown on one property. What we ran into in the past was that was being even further enhanced by additional 911 numbers. People were coming in and applying for additional 911 numbers, as the way the federal government prescribes or gives out these licenses is on an address basis. That address basis is basically through a 911 number. So with additional 911 numbers, every time you add one, you could be adding up to 4,000 plants. There are properties, or at least were properties in the county that had 4 addresses. So you could think at some of these properties that equates to about 16,000 plants, which is as large or sometimes larger than the commercial operations. And there's a big difference between the two types of facilities, being the commercial and the non-commercial type. The commercial versions are very regulated. They have very strict security measures. There's odor mitigation and light emission mitigation. However, the Part 2 facilities or individual facilities, they don't have any of that. They do have some requirements. You need to have a fence and a locked entry. But besides that, there's no mitigation required for odor or light, which is really what we've encountered here in Norfolk County. Staff and I believe council and the mayor have received numerous phone calls. There's probably a number of letters before council tonight identifying a lot of concerns and comments with people who live in proximity to these individual or designated facilities. And a lot of the concerns and comments are, for the most part, around odor. There's light emission issues as well, but greenhouses emit light, but these are a bit different than a greenhouse. These are emitting an enormous amount of odor, an odor that's really going unchecked and hasn't been screened or anything. And as you'll find in your letters, it's affecting the health of the individuals that live nearby, and also their way of life, and affecting their ability to enjoy their property. Norfolk County staff have assembled a cannabis task force in order to address the comments and concerns that have been raised by the public in Norfolk County. This board has been made up of planning, building, fire, the health unit, our agricultural board, our GIS services, the OPP, the Ministry of the Environment, OMAFRA, and also we had some representatives from Health Canada call in as well from Ottawa for our last meeting. We've also had some consultation with external legal counsel, and what's interesting to note from legal counsel is that they do note that municipalities have the option to self-regulate these facilities, and that information was also confirmed by Health Canada. The question was asked during one of our Cannabis Task Force meetings, can municipalities regulate the designated facilities? And the answer was yes, we can. But external legal counsel does give the caveat that there may be court or OMB challenges as a result of any types of decisions that's made on this matter. So for some information purposes, the Norfolk County zoning bylaw currently regulates the medical marijuana production in our zoning bylaw. That's covered under section 3.21. We also regulate obnoxious uses, and that's covered under section 3.27. I will say the definition and wording used in the obnoxious use policy currently is a little vague and is a little hard to enforce. The zoning bylaw also presently requires additional setbacks, so things like building separation for railways, animal clinics, livestock separation, municipal disposal, and the list goes on. I've provided the list before you with some of those setback requirements. So the report that I've put together outlines a number of options for how council could deal with these types of facilities in the future. The options start with option A. Option A says to place all greenhouses under site plan control. With the Planning Act, we have the ability to place certain sites in the county under site plan control, place development. Development is the key in that case. There are pros and cons to placing all types of greenhouses under site plan control. It's sort of a catch-all. It encompasses all types of greenhouses, but on the downside, it may encumber some existing legitimate greenhouse operations that are currently, abiding by all of the rules and regulations that are already in place. Option B is to place all cannabis greenhouses under site plan control. So it's quite similar to option A, but it only focuses on certain types of greenhouses. The challenge with this option is that this does not make a definable term in our zoning bylaw. So therefore from an enforcement perspective, it becomes very challenging. What's the trigger to say you're growing cucumbers versus you're growing cannabis? That's really what that would boil down to. Option C is to require that all cannabis production and processing sites obtain a business license. This is something that I think we need to look into a little bit more in the future. I've received some comments from external legal counsel about this option, and it's a little bit of a gray area. We're not exactly 100% sure whether or not agricultural uses fall under an exemption of the Municipal Act. So it's an option that I'd like to look into more in the future, but at this time, it may not be a very viable option. Next is option D, and that's to amend the existing Norfolk County zoning bylaw policy, which relates to the obnoxious uses, to include examples of what potential obnoxious uses are. And this is really what the bones that are missing from that policy. And would give it a lot more framework and really specify what types of uses we are referring to when we say obnoxious. And this would require just an amendment to that definition. Option E is to amend the Norfolk County zoning bylaw to include provisions for only licensed medical and recreational production and processing. So as we know, as of July 1st, the Ontario government is going to be looking for resources to fill their modified LCBO stores with a product that will be very much regulated and controlled for distribution and sale. So what we predict is a lot of the medical facilities may be switching over to medical and recreational, or there may be new facilities built under the Part 1 regulation for specifically recreational production. So option E is to amend the existing definition for medical marijuana production to just have reference to also the recreational version as well. Sorry, you have to bear with me. There are a lot of options here for you to consider. Option F is to amend the Norfolk County zoning bylaw to include provisions for all cannabis production and processing and permit them in the agricultural and industrial zones. So what this option does is it takes a look at our current framework for medical marijuana production facilities. So those facilities are currently permitted in our agricultural and industrial zones outright. They also have a required buffer between a sensitive land use. And the idea with option F is to create an all-encompassing definition for all types of marijuana production, being a Part 1 or a Part 2 facility. It wouldn't matter because it covers all types of production. And to further create that definition, sorry, let me just go back a little bit. All marijuana production and processing with the exception of the 4 plants per household. That is something that's coming out as of July 1st. All households are permitted to grow 4 plants on their own. This policy wouldn't consider that. It would just sort of be a logistical and enforcement nightmare to try to regulate that. But this would deal with the facilities of a certain size and scale. It would require a certain buffer, just like we have now, but the difference being that if you self-regulate yourself, just like the existing medical commercial facilities do, like they have odor controls and they have light emission controls and they are very highly security. If you control your use, just like those types of places, then your buffer would also be in the range of 150 meters from a sensitive land use. However, if you don't have those types of regulations and you don't self-regulate and you do continue to pour the odors out of your facilities, then there would be a much larger buffer added to your separation distance from a sensitive land use. These facilities would remain under site plan control, and the idea there is that we can still continue to monitor how parking and public access works with these sites. And it would create a new definition for all types of these uses, and it would be a new definition that would be termed something along the lines of alternative odorous and noxious agricultural site. And marijuana wouldn't be the only crop per se that would be under this new term. Mushroom production, for instance, is something else that can be quite odorous, so that would be something else that would be added to it. And then as we move along through the years, if there are any other crops that come up that pose this type of hazard or land use conflict, it would be something that could fall under that then as well. The idea behind option F is that although it adds a level of regulation and production and processing of cannabis for individuals or designated growers, it doesn't limit their access to medical cannabis, but rather it uses safety measures that are based on sound planning rationale to help mitigate land use conflicts between sensitive land uses by buffering potential contaminant issues to avoid the occurrence of adverse effect. And that's really important because when it comes back to the ACMPR, the federal regulations, we have to remember that they were created for a very specific reason, and that they were created to give people access. And that was challenged at the Supreme Court with the idea that it is a right to be able to have access to grow your own marijuana. Planning staff's opinion is that option F does not limit your access, it simply just adds some safety nets for the people around you as well, because those living around you also have a right to live safely and to be able to live without having to be subject to odor emissions. Option G and option H are somewhat similar to option F. The difference between G and H is that G would require a zoning bylaw amendment. So it would define the term just like option F does, but it wouldn't permit it in any zone outright. So in order for someone to have any type of marijuana production or processing site, it would require them to apply for a zoning bylaw amendment. And option H would be similar to that, but we would not deem that to be an agricultural use. Therefore, it wouldn't fall under our agricultural designation permitted use. So you would need a zoning bylaw amendment and an official plan amendment. In either of those cases, anyone who wants to have that type of production would be back before you here in council to request relief from the zoning bylaw or to have that use added to their property. Now, I will caution council that both options G and H start to teeter on the idea of limiting access. So it's something that it prevents somebody from doing it outright, and it starts to get into a bit of a charter of rights issue, those two options. So I just wanted to make that noted. And lastly, option I is to continue with status quo. Don't change anything, just keep doing what we're doing. So just some final thoughts to leave you with. There are some uncertainties in regard to if the production and processing of cannabis can be considered a normal farm practice. The provincial government has not made that determination yet. There are pending complaints with the Ministry of the Environment as it relates to adverse effect. They have received quite a few from residents here in Norfolk County, and those are related to the designated facilities. Again, they haven't gotten the chance to process them yet, but they are in the hopper. Next is, it's important to address all challenges, council may wish to combine certain policy options together. So you may notice from my list that you may prefer more than one option, and that's completely okay. It's, like I said earlier, be cautious not to over-regulate cannabis production and processing at the risk of violating charter rights. And again, that just comes back to, it's important not to limit the access. Otherwise, we're basically back to square one with where this ended up in Supreme Court. Decisions should be based on sound planning principles and critical observation. And lastly, like I said, try not to limit the access, but pick something that mitigates land use conflicts by buffering potential contaminated issues. And that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, we'll start with Councillor Black.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and through you to Matt. And Matt, thank you for all your hard work and all of staff. I know you've put a lot of time into this, and it's something brand new, something that we weren't anticipating and belongs to another level of government, but we seem to be stuck with it. So I thank you for all your hard work. First of all, I know your recommendation is just to receive this information, but you are looking for direction and possibly us putting one or two or whatever of these options forward. Is that correct? Okay.
The Chair, that's correct.
Yeah, and just wondering, on the 911 numbers, I guess Norfolk County didn't realize, why these numbers, additional 911 numbers were being requested, and we issued them. Were we able to retract them, take them away? Have we done that?
Yes, through the chair, that matter has been resolved. We issued a number of letters to those property owners notifying them that those additional 911 numbers have been revoked. And moving forward, we are in the process now of amending our addressing policy, and that will be before council shortly. So what we're going to be adding is an extra question to the form, just asking what the additional 911 number is for. And if you're not truthful in that form, the county will be able to reserve the right to remove the 911 number in the future.
Okay, but, so we've revoked those numbers, but does that mean the 3 extra licenses have now been revoked?
Through the chair, we have also sent a letter to Health Canada notifying them that the 911 numbers have been removed, so it will be up to Health Canada to deal with those 3 additional licenses in the cases where there were 4 911 numbers.
Okay, and if we change something here, or adopt something here today to do an amendment, will that affect the existing operations?
One of the options before you, it's a good question. So we've given a little bit of thought to that. One of the options before you is to amend the existing policy in regards to the obnoxious uses. And we need a little bit of confirmation from this from our county solicitor, but the idea behind that option would be if it explicitly shows what is now a noxious use, the idea of having something being grandfathered or it being legal non-conforming wouldn't be an option, because the use would have always been obnoxious. So therefore, it wasn't legal to begin with.
Okay.
So a legal non-conforming option wouldn't be there.
Oh, well, that's good to hear then. Certainly, I am willing to support, at least a couple of these options, and before putting a motion forward, I just listened to everybody else's concerns and questions, but certainly, listening to your advice, it seems to me that D and F would be the most appropriate, but I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I would definitely support D or F, but I don't. Do you want to make a comment on all of those? Like, do you have a preference yourself as to which ones would be the most appropriate, most effective for the problems that we're experiencing right now? Would D and F be good enough, or should we be looking at adding another one?
Through the chair, I don't have any particular preference, but I can issue caution with certain options. So D and F would possess the least amount of risk.
Okay. Well, right now, they're my 2 favorites, but I'll stop and listen to everyone else.
Okay, Councillor Brunton, you're up.
A couple of questions to Matt and his report. Very good report, Matt. I took a lot to digest, I guess. But first of all, I see in your report on page 99, you say January 20th, 2018 is the date for, I guess, anybody to respond to Health Canada. Is that correct? So my question, sorry?
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct. And staff are in the process of drafting a response.
Okay, but are they going to summarize everything and get back, like, who knows what else might be out there that we haven't considered? Is that a possibility that I wouldn't say we'd be premature to adopt something right now. I'm wondering if we adopt something as a safeguard in the interim, but have to have something that we can open the door again and add to it if we need to.
Through the chair, that would be an option for council in the future. If there's something that we would want to add to this policy in the future, staff could revisit whatever policy is created.
So is that going to be a problem in terms of the zoning bylaw or official plan amendment, whatever we have to undertake to time frame wise? Is that going to be a problem?
Through the chair, it would be very similar to this process.